From Mark Hunt to Randy Couture, these are the UFC fighters Dana White hates. Let's be real, if you're an MMA fighter and you get on Dana White's bad side, you better watch out. White is known for speaking his mind, and he's definitely not afraid to throw shade at fighters who he thinks have stepped out of line. There have been a number of UFC fighters who found themselves in the crosshairs of Dana White's wrath over the years. Whether it's due to bad behavior inside or outside of the octagon, White has been quick to put them in their place. Some fighters who've gotten on the wrong side of Dana White include the likes of Tito Ortiz, Paulo Costa, and Michael Bisping. These fighters have all had their fair share of controversies, and Dana White's been more than happy to throw them under the bus. But it's not just the big names that have gotten on White's bad side. Lesser-known fighters have also felt the sting of his criticism. The bottom line is that if you're a UFC fighter and you don't play by the rules, Dana White is gonna let you know about it. Paul Daly, a name that brings back memories of a career derailed by one foolish act. The fighter's lack of self-control got the better of him when he sucker-punched Josh Koscheck after the bell, a move that cost him his career and potentially millions of dollars in lost earnings. Dana White was having none of it, trashing Daly and immediately firing him from the UFC, effectively ending any chance of him ever returning to the promotion. It's a harsh lesson to learn, but one that highlights the importance of staying disciplined and keeping your emotions in check, especially when millions of dollars are on the line. Even former champions can get under his skin. That's right, Dana White was furious with the one and only Lyoto Machida for his shady attempt to get more money from the UFC. Machida had agreed to step in and fight Rashad Evans after his scheduled opponent dropped out, but then he asked UFC legend Anderson Silva for extra cash. When the UFC found out, White was not pleased and called out Machida for his greediness. Despite being a former champion, Machida's reputation was tarnished by this incident, and it's unlikely that he'll be in White's good books anytime soon. Buckle up for some UFC drama, fight fans, because we're about to dive into the ongoing beef between UFC President Dana White and former light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz. These two have been going at it for what seems like forever, and it doesn't look like they'll be making up anytime soon. The tension between White and Ortiz is palpable, with insults and digs being thrown back and forth on a regular basis. Ortiz has accused White of treating UFC fighters like slaves, while White has fired back with his own choice words about Ortiz's skill in the octagon. But it's not just words that have been exchanged. The two even planned to settle their differences in the ring with a boxing match, but alas, it never happened. Can you imagine the fireworks that would have ensued if that bout had actually gone down? No matter what you think of either of these guys, it's hard to deny the entertainment value of their feud. It's like a real-life soap opera, complete with dramatic statements, physical altercations, and a whole lot of ego. One thing is for sure, the beef between White and Ortiz is not something that's going to fizzle out quietly anytime soon. If you're a longtime UFC fan, the chances are you're familiar with Randy Couture. Couture and White have a long-standing beef that's spilled over into the legal realm. So what's the deal, you ask? Well, it has to do with Couture's contractual obligations and his relationship with Bellator. Dana wasn't too pleased when Randy decided to leave the UFC and join forces with their rival promotion. You can imagine the tension that ensued, and things only escalated from there. Dana and the UFC took Couture to court over the matter, which only added fuel to the fire. Let's just say it wasn't pretty. It's a shame to see such a talented fighter and a UFC legend caught up in all this drama. But hey, what's a little beef without a little drama, right? We'll have to wait and see if these two can ever squash their beef and come to an understanding. Until then, let the drama continue. Oh, Mark Hunt, one of the all-time fan favorites. What ever happened between him and White? It all started back in 2016 when Hunt accused White of some pretty serious allegations, including fixing fights and doping fighters. Yikes! To make matters worse, Hunt hit the UFC with a lawsuit, claiming that he was only being matched against fighters with doping histories. That didn't sit well with White, who fired back with some choice words of his own and had the UFC file a claim of their own. Needless to say, the animosity between these two is through the roof. Hunt's accusations have definitely ruffled some feathers, and it's safe to say that biting the hand that feeds you isn't always the best idea. So while Hunt may be a formidable fighter in the octagon, he may have bitten off more than he can chew by going up against the UFC's head honcho. Will this feud ever die down? Only time will tell. Now, we all know who Mighty Mouse is, but how different could his career have been had he abided by Dana White's wishes? It turns out that Demetrius Johnson wasn't too keen on Dana White's matchmaking suggestions. Specifically, White wanted Johnson to fight TJ Dillashaw, but Johnson had his sights set on Ray Borg instead. According to Johnson, White was trying to bully him into fighting Dillashaw, and it caused a ton of tension between the two. Johnson wasn't shy about expressing his frustrations either. In fact, he went on some pretty epic rants that would make even the toughest UFC fighters blush. But hey, can you really blame the guy? He just wanted to fight who he wanted to fight. Thankfully, things have calmed down between Johnson and White since then. But let's be real, it's always entertaining when two big personalities clash in the UFC. Let's talk about Paulo Costa, who got himself in hot water after trying to pull a fast one on the UFC. The fighter attempted to dress up his buddy as a fake doctor to make his fight at UFC 248 against Robert Whittaker. White was not having it and trashed Costa for his actions. Despite the criticism, White still acknowledges Costa's eagerness to fight and respects him as a fighter. And good for fight fans too. Costa is a darn entertaining fighter to watch. Brock Lesnar, the man monster, was once a major draw card for Dana in the UFC. But he's caused Dana quite a few headaches over the years. There was one instance when Brock began bashing the UFC sponsors. At the end of his fight with Frank Mir at UFC 100, he had a post-fight interview, and it went a little something like this. "I'm going to drink a Coors Light, 'cause Bud Light don't pay me nothing." His comment caught the attention of Bud Light, one of the UFC's main sponsors. I'm not surprised. Dana didn't take too kindly to that and took him backstage and apparently gave him a right earful. Lesnar later wrote in his book, "Before the press conference that night, Dana took me into a bathroom and let me know what was on his mind. I said later that night that it was a whip the dog session. And believe me, it was. And just so I'm honest as hell here in my own book about it, he was upset with me. And the truth is, he had every right to be." Michael Bisping. The Count is a legendary fighter. But even the greats can sometimes find themselves in hot water with the big boss. In this case, Dana wasn't happy with Bisping's actions during UFC 127. Bisping allegedly performed an illegal move during his fight with Jorge Rivera and then proceeded to spit on Rivera's team. Dana wasn't about to let that slide, and he made sure Bisping knew it by withholding his bonus and giving him an earful after the fight. It just goes to show that no matter how talented you are, you still need to keep it classy in the octagon. These were the most notable mentions of the UFC fighters which Dana White hates.